Donald Trump said he would be the law and order president, and much like any other claim he has ever made, we knew it was a lie. Donald Trump is currently at war with the judiciary and his own Supreme Court, in fact, after he takes lawless action after lawless action. And we are now seeing him, because he is losing this war with the judiciary and his own Supreme Court, start to threaten judges. And that is exactly what he did after Chief Justice John Roberts made a rare statement calling out this attack on the judicial branch from Donald Trump, and it has him raging. And we are going to get into all of it. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, before we can get into Trump's insane meltdown and the statement from John Roberts, I first want to get a little bit of context on how this all started from Rachel Maddow right here.
So again, this was an emergency hearing late on Saturday, and the judge ended up basically saying, listen, there are difficult questions of law here, and these are going to have to be worked out in the courts. For now, I am blocking the Trump administration from deporting people under this law from the 1700s. They are blocked from using this law as the basis for these deportations until we can hash out these legal questions. So the judge actually said to the Trump administration lawyer, quote, "You shall inform your clients," meaning inform the Trump administration, "of this immediately. You should inform them that any plane containing these folks that's going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned to the United States. Those people need to be returned to the United States." Quote, "This is something that you need to make sure is complied with immediately." By all appearances, that order was not complied with immediately. NBC News reports that 2 flights carrying these men were in transit when the judge issued his ruling, but they did not turn around. They continued on their way. The Washington Post reports that a 3rd plane was still on the ground at the time of that ruling. It hadn't taken off in Texas until after that judge's ruling had been issued. The next morning, the pro-Trump president of El Salvador announced that his country had accepted 238 men from the United States. He posted a slickly produced 3-minute propaganda video of some of these men being sort of manhandled and pushed around, and all of them having their heads shaved by armed Salvadoran military or security forces. President Trump happily posted the video as well. The president of El Salvador says these men will be jailed in a massive prison in his country for as many years as the U.S. wants to pay him to keep them there. They have not been charged with crimes and thereby sentenced to serve this time. They're just being locked up indefinitely at the pleasure of El Salvador. At the White House press briefing today, Trump's press secretary listed all the crimes these men ostensibly committed, but a senior Trump administration official tells NBC News that these men have not necessarily been convicted of any of these crimes. Still, though, they're in prison now in El Salvador indefinitely, having been disappeared out of this country with no process whatsoever. We don't even know who these guys are. They keep saying they're Venezuelan gang members. We don't even know if they're Venezuelans, let alone gang members. Unsurprisingly, the federal judge who held that hearing on Saturday, where he made it abundantly clear that nobody was supposed to be sent to El Salvador, he called a new hearing today to assess whether the Trump administration had knowingly violated his court order. Quote, "A federal judge pressed a Justice Department lawyer today over why the Trump administration did not comply with his order to temporarily halt deportations under an 18th century law, and asked why key information about the flights was being withheld over the weekend. In a tense hearing, the judge summarized the administration's position on his court order Saturday as, quote, "We don't care, we'll do what we want." The Trump administration lawyer at this evening's hearing still refused to provide any information about the flights. And so the judge has now ordered another hearing for tomorrow at noon, at which the Trump administration must give him the information he wants or explain the legal rationale for why they are not giving it to him. And if they don't, then, well then. Hanging in the balance immediately is the fate of untold numbers of people who Donald Trump may try to send to this Salvadoran prison. The president of El Salvador has said openly that he'd be happy to put U.S. citizens there too. But also hanging in the balance is whether the Trump administration is considering not just trying to wheedle their way out of it, but whether they're considering openly flouting a court order. which is a very fast trip down a very short street in terms of how much of a republic we still are.
So obviously it is clear that Donald Trump is taking these unlawful actions on an issue that he has some popular support for, so he can use it as a means to an end to ultimately say, we will not listen to the judiciary if it stops us from saving America, as he's claimed. But really what he wants to do is just abandon checks and balances at large. And it's the reason he was so upset when his order got struck down, and is even more upset now with John Roberts calling him out. And I want to take a look at both of those statements, first from Trump, then John Roberts, right here. Trump wrote on Truth Social, "The radical left lunatic of a judge, a troublemaker and agitator who was sadly appointed by Barack Hussein Obama, was not elected president. He didn't win the popular vote by a lot." Not true. He didn't win all 7 swing states. He didn't win 2,750 to 525 counties. He didn't win anything. I won for many reasons. In an overwhelming mandate. Not true. But fighting illegal immigration may have been the #1 reason for the historic victory. I'm just doing what the voters wanted me to do. The judge, like many of the crooked judges I am forced to appear for, should be impeached. We don't want vicious, violent, and demented criminals, many of them deranged murderers in our country. Make America great again. And Justice Roberts responded in a rare statement to Trump's call to impeach judges, writing, "For more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to a disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose." Donald Trump now has his own MAGA Supreme Court calling out this ridiculous idea that he is trying to push. But also, John Roberts, spare me. Are you serious? Now you're realizing Donald Trump might not want to follow the law? The guy you gave presidential immunity to, a legal theory that did not exist before Donald Trump and only exists because of your cowardice. That's the guy that you're telling, oh, maybe this is a little bit too much. Did you not see this coming? Why do you think he wanted the presidential immunity in the first place? It's absolutely ridiculous to believe that Donald Trump will be kept in line by any checks, because that's what he is actively calling for right now, to be unchecked. He wanted to be a dictator. We were not like screaming and shouting at clouds in the sky when Democrats were warning people about just how abusive of his power Donald Trump would be. And now we see it playing out. And it's crazy because of the hypocrisy that's also baked in to these attacks that Donald Trump is making on the judiciary. Just listen to Carolyn Levitt getting caught up and tripped up in this question right here.
Hey, so on Friday, the president suggested at length that it should be illegal to criticize judges, but he has repeatedly criticized judges who rule against him, and Elon Musk is calling for impeachment of judges who have opposed the administration. So how are those two things not in conflict?
I have not heard the president talk about impeaching judges. I know you mentioned Mr. Musk's tweet, but I have not heard the president of the United States ask that. Mary.
So Donald Trump, the guy who spends all his time attacking the judiciary, the guy who spends all his time attacking judges, the guy who spends all his time raging against the legal system, a legal system that benefits him so much that he's not in prison right now where he should be spending the rest of his life. He says you can't criticize judges and then goes on to call for their impeachment. It's absolutely nonsensical, and Caroline Levitt is too dumb to come up with an argument, but she didn't even try there because she knows how ridiculous it is. This is absolute insanity. Donald Trump exclusively talked about the weaponization of the DOJ and the Justice Department on the campaign trail when our legal system constantly gave him just like easy outs to the crimes that he had committed. And now he is using that same legal system to go after his political enemies. He wants to go after those who tried to hold him accountable for January 6th. He wants to go after anyone who criticizes him or writes anything about him. He is unleashed. And the fact that John Roberts is putting out a statement now rather than, years ago is absolute insanity. You think this is the beginning or the end of the attack on the judiciary? You putting out a statement? Think again. It is scary. And Jamie Raskin called out just how dangerous it is in front of the DOJ right here.
No other president in American history has stood at the Department of Justice to proclaim an agenda of criminal prosecution and retaliation against his political foes. This thoroughly partisan and delusional diatribe was a staggering violation of the traditional boundary between independent criminal law enforcement and presidential political power. The speak we just witnessed is a desecration of the essential values of the storied department in every way. It's an insult to the thousands of professional lawyers who go to work at the Department of Justice every day to enforce the rule of law, not the personal vendettas and partisan games of a politician. President Grant and Congress created the Department of Justice in 1870, 5 years after the Civil War, in the throes of Reconstruction. It was an exercise of Congress's powers under Section 5 of the 14th Amendment, which had just been added to the Constitution 2 years before. The purpose of the department was to protect the newly freed African American population in the South against escalating violence by the Ku Klux Klan and unrepentant secessionists. Congress wanted to protect the voting rights of the emancipated population against racial disenfranchisement schemes. Now, the Department of Justice, which first set out to defend the rule of law against white supremacy and vigilante violence, has become a department of injustice, cruelty, favoritism, and unfairness. One of Trump's first acts was to try to nullify the very first sentence of the 14th Amendment, which establishes that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a citizen of the United States. And they tried to destroy that, leading to at least 4 federal courts invalidating this executive order: an Obama judge, a Biden judge, a Reagan judge, and even a Trump judge. And the Reagan judge said it was the easiest case he ever had to decide. You don't have to be a lawyer to know what's wrong with that executive order or any of the other ones. You just have to know how to read.
We have to meet this moment with the gravity that it requires. This is a full-fledged assault on our democracy. If Donald Trump can override a judge based on threats, then there's no more America. Then it's over. That is the end. And I said this in a previous video, if Democrats are too worried to approach the issue of immigration, and therefore they are unwilling to call out this blatant assault on our democracy, if they think that, oh, well, you know, we don't want to step on the toes of this immigration plan, you know, people might get upset at us if we push back on the deportations, then you shouldn't be in elected office if you're unwilling to call out the heart of what is happening here. This has nothing to do with immigration. This has everything to do with breaking our legal system. And we have to call that out. And we're certainly going to on the show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.